How can you conquer fear and achieve super success? That is what I want to talk about today on London Real Journeys. We thought the very first London Real Journey should document my 6-year relationship with a man called Dan Pena.
I want you to kill. Run towards the gunfire and kill them all.
There's no single person in the entire history of London Real that's changed my life more than this nearly 75-year-old American man.
I believe that we're put on this planet to be all we can be.
And yet when Dan first met me, I was a one-man show broadcasting from my apartment. And I was starting to ask myself hard questions like, what are you doing, Brian? This isn't a business. This is not going where you want it to go. And I was at a point in my life where I really needed to meet someone like Dan.
The money's not the only thing in life, but it's the only thing anybody keeps track of.
The old man is always right. Most of the time, we are weak. Our minds, they trick us into settling for less.
Man's greatest burden is unfulfilled potential.
He just made me realize that I was playing small and that my life was going to be over. I was going to be dead sooner than later.
Once you become fearless, life becomes limitless. The difference between me and everybody in this room is I have no fear of anything.
It was just this whole new push where I was taking risks and going into my fears.
You're a cunt, Brian, not me. And you want these people to like you.
And you're telling me I'm weak on that email? Because you love me, because you care.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you try to do it alone, you're never going to be anywhere near as successful as you need to be. Never. When you think that you are trying hard, most of the time, it's out of fear that you're not going bigger. It's out of worry about what other people will think of you. I'm still learning from Dan. I still disagree with Dan. That will be true until one of us dies. You want to honor this gift of life? Well, then show you honor it and go out there and fucking do something. That's what Dan is telling us. And that's why I believe that this whole thing is not even about Dan. It's about us being the best version of ourselves.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go?
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... How can you conquer fear and achieve super success? That is what I want to talk about today on London Real Journeys. And this is a brand new format where I'm going to be reviewing some of our 600 plus episodes that we've filmed over the last 9 years and bringing to you the best nuggets of information to where you can see a through line that solves a problem for you or gives you a purpose or a solution for what's going on in your life. And so we thought the very first London Real Journey should kick off and document my 6-year relationship with a man called Dan Pena. You might know him as the $50 billion man. You might know him as the $1 trillion man. But I have to be honest, there's no single person in the entire history of London Real that's changed my life more than this nearly 75-year-old American man who lives in a castle in Scotland. He is a high-performance coach. And tonight, I want to show you my entire evolution, what this man taught me. And don't get me wrong, I want to be really honest about this. I went kicking and screaming when it came to my personal transformation with Dan as my mentor. And I want to show you all of the moments I went through tonight to document what it was like for me to learn from this man. And to be honest, I'm still learning from Dan. I still disagree with Dan. I still love Dan, and I still hate Dan in many ways. And I probably think that will be true until one of us dies. And as he jokes with me, we're not quite sure who that's going to be, because Dan thinks he's going to live forever, and maybe he will. But the truth is that Dan's had an incredible effect on my life. Let's be honest, I'm actually dressing like Dan. This suit was made by Dan Pena's tailor, who's also been a guest on London Real. And yet when Dan first met me, I was wearing skateboarder clothes. I was wearing G-Star Raw trousers. I had something growing on my chin, which is called a soul patch, I think. And I was a one-man show broadcasting from my apartment in Shoreditch. And London Real was about 2 years old, something like that, maybe 2.5 years old. And the excitement had ended, and I didn't know where I was taking the show, and I was starting to ask myself hard questions like, what are you doing, Brian? This isn't a business. This is not going where you want it to go. What are your choices? Are you gonna stop the show? Are you gonna go back and be a banker and do something you hate doing? And I was at a point in my life where I really needed to meet someone like Dan. And like I said, a lot of his advice I was very, very hesitant to take. And we still go back and forth, and that's what I want to show you today. And ideally, some of this will strike a chord with you, and you'll see parts of yourself in me or parts of yourself in Dan, and hopefully one of these things will help you break through to the other side. Because there's a line I always like to say, and that is that the old man is always right. And I hate saying that right now, even as I say that to you. But the truth is that most of the time Dan is right, because most of the time we are weak. Our minds trick us into doing things that aren't in our interest. They trick us into settling for less. And Dan has gone off and railed about the snowflake generation, and I'm going to play a clip later. But he says snowflakes melt under pressure. And he is the guy that puts pressure on people to show you how great you are inside. And one of the things Dan said to me is what he says to a lot of his mentees. He said, I see so much potential inside of you. I see so much potential. And now that I've instructed over 5,000 students in my London Real Academy, I know how he feels. I get people in my academy or people here in the studio sometimes, and I see so much potential, and yet they're allowing their own mediocrity to stop them from achieving greatness that would be great for their family, great for society, great even for me if they were just better versions of themselves. And yet they just can't see it and they can't break through. So today, if you pay attention and stay with me, I want to take you on a journey that could transform your life, because it transformed mine. And I was the last person that wanted to hear these lessons. So before we get started, you might be asking yourself, Brian, who is this guy, Dan Pena? I don't know anything about him. Or maybe you've seen a clip or an episode. So let me give you an introduction into who Dan Pena is now. And this comes from a movie that we made about Dan. We make documentary films here at London Real. We've made 6 so far. And this was called The $50 Billion Man. This premiered about 3 years ago at the Curzon Theater in Mayfair. Dan was there, and it told my story of Dan and how he influenced my life. At points in this movie, I'm very critical of Dan. At points in this movie, I'm very supportive of Dan. But it really tells an honest journey of the two of us for the past 6 years. And like I said, I don't know what's going to happen for the next 6 years, but it could be interesting as well. So here is a short introduction to who Dan Pena really is.
Today I'm traveling back to the place where my life changed. To see the man I hate. My mentor, Dan Pena. The $50 billion man. A figure born out of the wildest American dreams. Or nightmares. His grandparents crossed the border illegally from Mexico. His father was a cop, and some say an assassin for the CIA. Dan grew up in the barrio of East Los Angeles, where he learned the concept that will mark the rest of his life. I'd rather be dead than poor. Dan was always where the action was, First, the military. Next, Wall Street. Then, the oil business. You name it, Dan would seek it out and conquer. He is rich, arrogant, controversial, rude, violent, politically incorrect, a climate change denier, and an early Trump supporter. If you hate something in this world, it's very possible that Dan embodies it. His life is a constant adrenaline rush. In 72 years, he has amassed more money than he can spend in 10 lifetimes. These days, he teaches people how to be just like him at his castle in Scotland. He calls it QLA, the Quantum Leap Advantage, his 7-day seminar, where he's known to make grown men cry. And yes, he seriously has his own castle. The truth is, Dan changed my life. But that was never supposed to happen.
Merry Christmas to YouTube. And all you poor fuckers out there. You know? And we're going to show, that's pan down. Move a little, move. That's what Christmas is supposed to look like, you poor fucks. And if it doesn't look like this, about 300 presents here. If something ain't right, if your Christmas doesn't look like this.
My name is Brian Rose, and I'm the founder and host of London Real. Every week I broadcast important stories, curated from the greatest minds on the planet. I'm trying to make the world a better place. Today, I'm taking the same train I took 2 years ago, when I decided to undertake an experiment. To be mentored by Dan Pena. I recorded everything. I thought it would be amusing. It wasn't. Dan stands for everything I hate. That's why I haven't spoken to him in a year. He only cares about one thing: money. In the last 20 years, his mentees have created over $50 billion of wealth. The top performers get immortalized with their picture in his coveted Hall of Fame. It's the wet dream of every one of his minions. That wall represents everything that's wrong with this world. And now he wants to put me on it. But I'm not a trophy.
We have a number of announcements that we'll be making this week, but one of the most important is the inductee of a brand new Hall of Famer, our very own, and I might add, the quickest to make it to the Hall of Fame since he attended the seminar. And he's very truly yours, Brian QLA Rose.
What's happening here is that I'm paying for my sins. Because I introduced Dan Pena to the world and made him a YouTube sensation. I opened Pandora's box, and I'll probably go to hell for it.
Wow, even that's crazy for me to watch, because Dan he's nothing if not completely unpolitically correct. Dan will say anything at any time about anyone. He doesn't care if you buy his book because he doesn't have one. He doesn't really have much to sell you. He's got a castle seminar, but I don't even think he cares about that. And so he's probably the most unique individual I've ever met in this world, because everyone else I've ever met always has an agenda. They have a business, they have a product. They have to kind of have some type of a control over what they say, but Dan doesn't. And so while this offends a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people were just offended right now, for me, I find it really refreshing that someone can just say what's actually happening out there. The only other people that have this opportunity in this day and age are comedians, and that's why we like them, because they call us on all of our BS. And so Dan will call you what you are, and he'll call you out on your own BS that you're telling yourself when you think that you are trying hard or you think you're doing something for another reason. Most of the time, it's out of fear that you're not going bigger. It's out of worry about what other people will think of you. And you'll see this as a theme as we go through this London Real journey, as far as what's holding me back from being all that I can be, as Dan would say. And so a lot of people say, Brian, tell me about the first time you met Dan. Well, the first time I met Dan was somewhere around March of 2014. And Dan had heard that London Real was a show that maybe he should be on. And so he's got a whole host of personal assistants up at Guthrie Castle in Scotland. And they were emailing me saying, Dan Pena wants to be on your show. He's the $50 billion man. And I was like, 50 billion what? This is not the guy I want on my show. I used to be a banker, I used to be a capitalist, but now I'm into free content, I'm into ayahuasca, I'm into telling people stories. I don't need some guy that reminds me of who I used to be or reminds me of the things about myself that I hate on my show. So I said no, I ignored them, which is worse than a no, and Dan doesn't like to be ignored. Most people don't ever ignore Dan. So I ignored him for weeks, but they kept pushing, and the honest truth is that sooner or later, I needed to book a show. I needed a guest, and I was like, all right, just send him in, because I didn't have any other guests for that week. So Dan rolls up to my studio, and there we are. Again, I'm dressed in skater gear. Dan is dressed in a three-piece suit, not unlike this one. And I gotta say, he looked like $1 million. He just looked amazing. He was about 70 years old right there. Now, of course, if I told Dan he looked like $1 million, he'd think that was an insult, because he's worth a few $100 million, I believe. But he looked great and sat down in the chair, kind of looked me over a little bit, and we proceeded to have an 1.5 hour long conversation that's been watched by, I think, over 1 million people at this point. And I never thought this episode would be a defining moment of London Real. I told Dan on the show, London Reelers are either gonna love you or hate you. And you can see I'm really skeptical on this show. And I'm like, I introduce him and I'm like, you're some type of a Bond villain. You have a castle in Scotland. And I'm kind of making a joke. And again, Dan looks at me because he's not used to people joking about him, because most of his followers worship him, and most of the guys he's done business with in the past respect him. But I didn't know much about him. So I proceeded to ask hard questions and to try to delve into his process, and also try to give him a fair interview. I try to do that with anyone that sits in the chair. And so I want to play for you a short clip of something that went viral on the back of this interview. And this is Dan with a very famous phrase. And this is also Dan starting to push me a little bit. He's starting to kind of dig into me a little bit and say, Brian, is this really all you can do? Is this what you're all about? And so here's Dan talking about money and Zen.
Shall we do this?
Absolutely.
Okay, here we go. This is London Real. My guest today is Mr. Dan Pena, who is an American-born businessman, entrepreneur, and mentor who lives in a castle in Scotland. Dan, you're like a James Bond villain in that way. And you're dressed for success. I don't know many people that can pull off a three-piece suit and a gold chain. That's fantastic. You are the author of the book, Your First 100 Million, which you just gave me a copy. Thank you very much. I guess that's $100 million.
Correct.
Okay. What do you tell people that you do when they ask you? What do you say?
Well, the last 20 years, I've been a coach, mentor, high-performance coach to the select few that really want to be all they can be.
Let me ask you a question. You know we're very zen here on this show, and we talk a lot about...
I'm here anyway.
Yeah, you're here anyways, exactly. We like to shake it up here and try some different things. What if I said to you, okay, this guy is going to be ultra successful. He's going to make $1 billion. What if I said, Jan, why does it matter what he makes?
It doesn't matter.
Or my question is, to you, that is the ultimate metric of success.
No. Money's not the only thing in life, but it's the only thing anybody keeps track of. It's measurable, accountable. Since the pharaohs.
Okay, right.
Size of the pyramids, etc. Okay.
It's a metric you can keep track of.
Correct. But what I give you, Brian, is the ability to have more choices. I have more, I'm just assuming I have more money than you. So I'm going to say that I have a lot more choices than you do.
Because you have more money than me.
If you want to send your kids to a better school, if you want to be able to take care of your mother when she gets dementia, if you want to, this all takes money, not Zen. I never paid a bill with Zen.
Then the unexpected happened. People love Dan.
Most of us go through life with our emergency brakes on. Then you release the brake. What happens? Whew. I get people to do that they think they're impossible. You come to me with your goals. By the time you leave at the 7th day, your goals are a factor between 5 and 100 times bigger. You give me your business model in 120 seconds, and I'll tell you in 60 seconds whether it will work, if it can't work, how to fix it, or whether the shit can't.
Okay, that's your specialty.
Correct.
But you probably charge a lot of money for that. Do you ever think to yourself and look in the mirror and you're in your castle and you're like, you know what? I need to get rid of all this stuff. I need people to meet me and not know that I'm, Dan Pena of the castle in my CV, and I need people to tell me straight and be like, who the hell is this guy? And I have to, start over again. Do you ever think that would be one of the ultimate challenges for you?
No, but I've got a better challenge.
Okay.
Bringing 25,000 people across the goal line that should be living in a homeless shelter is much more satisfying than that.
And it made me think.
You could whip me into shape?
Yeah.
You think?
You'd be a tough sled, but like Atlas Shrugged, pushing the...
Why would I be tough, Dan?
Because you...
Am I set in my ways?
No. At your age, you can't be set in your ways yet.
Okay. Am I in my comfort zone too much?
That's probably... I don't know you well enough, but that could be it.
Okay.
You seem to enjoy what you do, or you got a pretty good shtick about it, so...
Right.
Okay. There will be a life beyond London
This.
Real.
Yes, there probably will.
Yeah, I'm sure. You're too young. I don't think you can do London Real until you're 55 or 60. It's not likely.
Okay, this is good. Come on.
Yeah.
Give me a few minutes free consultation.
No. Once I get you to release your emergency brake, Brian.
Then you'll be carrying me over the goal line.
Notwithstanding your Zen.
Yeah. You think the Zen is hurting me?
No.
Actually?
No. It's
Okay.
It's where you're supposed to be today.
Dan, you are an original. You are a unique gentleman. Thanks for coming here and telling us about yourself. I asked you some hard questions, and I appreciate you answering them.
My pleasure, and I wish everybody in the audience all the luck and good fortune they earn.
One of the crazy things when you have a show where you broadcast every week is that you get these video diaries of who you were 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 8 years ago. So for me, it's always crazy to watch Brian from 2014 because I am in high definition multi-camera, and I can see my brain trying to get my head around Dan. And part of me is trying to kind of push back with my, alpha maleness against this guy who's trying to get in my face. But part of me also is looking to an older man who's been successful and asking myself, what can I learn from him? And also asking myself honest questions like, how was I really doing? And deep down inside, I knew I wasn't where I wanted to be. London Real wasn't where it needed to be. And so that day, Dan planted the seed. And he always told me that we put up a picture earlier where I had a picture with Dan against the brick wall of the old studio, and I put a jacket on, a suit jacket I had in the closet right before we took the picture. And he said to me recently, he said, I knew I had you when you put the suit jacket on, because he said, you obviously felt underdressed and felt like you wanted to be more. And I retorted with, of course I wanted to be more, Dan. Everybody who's a high performance person wants to be more. So I just went back to him. But we continue to argue to this day. But after the camera stopped that day, Dan stayed in my studio for another 2 or 3 hours. And he kept talking to me. He debunked a lot of personal help people and said, I know this guy is broke, and I know this guy doesn't own his house, and like all this stuff. He proceeded to even insult some of the people that I had looked up to. And then we walked outside the studio. This is the old place on Tabernacle Street. And went to get a taxi for him. And he stood out in front of me before the taxi was arriving, and he put his hands out and he said, Brian, look at me. And it was nighttime at this point. And he said, can you see a green glow around me? And I was like, what? He said, can you see a green glow around me? Some people see an aura around me. And I said, no, Dan, I can't see a green glow around you. I was like, this guy's obviously off his rocker. And then he went to shake my hand and he said, Brian, I change people's lives, and I'm gonna change your life. And he jumped in the black taxi and went back to the Ritz. And honestly, the next 24 hours, my brain hurt. I felt like I had drank ayahuasca. And a lot of people think that's ridiculous because ayahuasca is a plant medicine that is more on the hippie spectrum than the capitalist spectrum. But in both instances, whether it's ayahuasca or Peña, you see a different reality, a version of yourself that maybe you want to be. With ayahuasca, maybe it's a better person, a more giving person, a more real person, a person that doesn't do these bad things. And with Peña, I saw a version of someone I might want to be as well. And then you're processing that with your current reality and realizing, why aren't I this person? What do I have to do to become this person? So for the next 24 hours, I was really shaken up. And I talked about this later. I talked about this in the movie, about how it got under my skin, and it got me thinking, do I keep talking to this guy or not? And so that was the seed. It was planted. It was followed by email after email after email. And when we made the movie, The $50 Billion Man, you can watch all this content, by the way, on our website for free. I went through all these old emails, and there, of course, all of Dan's emails are in all caps, red letters. That's not like a joke. That wasn't like a creative piece I stuck in the movie to make it more impactful. That's actually how he writes emails. He uses his two fingers, and he abbreviates things like LOL and WTF. He actually does that. He wrote me these long emails, and he was just supporting me. He said, Brian, if there's anything I can do, please help me. He'd write me a 3-page long email talking about the reaction he got and what people were saying and what he saw me doing. And I think a lot of people forget Dan can be an extremely generous person, more so than any other guest I had on London Real, even my so-called buddies or whatever. Dan was just constantly staying in touch with me. And then he said, Brian, I want you to come to dinner at the Ritz. And this was in August. I still remember it was a Sunday night because I had to put a suit and tie on a Sunday. And I hadn't worn a suit and tie in years, probably 10 years, because I didn't even wear one in banking at the end of my career. And I put a suit and tie on. I brought Mariana to the Ritz, which is a hotel in London, very famous. And we proceeded to have dinner with Dan and Sally, which was, again, a little tricky because Dan can get in everyone's face. He got into my wife's face a little bit, started making fun of where she was from. I kind of made fun where Dan was from, but it's just how Dan does that. He tests everybody. And at the end of the night, he said, Brian, if I'm going to mentor you, you got to come to the castle. I can't do it over email. I can't do it over this. And I didn't say yes, but I thought about it that night. And a few weeks later, I thought, if I don't take him up on this request, then what am I going to do? I'm going to keep doing the same things. And what's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing, expecting a different result. And I was alone back then. I had no one helping me with London Real, which meant I had no one to talk about, no one to get counsel for. And most people thought I was crazy, or some people thought I was doing the right thing, but I really needed some help, some mentorship, someone. And so a couple weeks later, I said, yes, Dan, I'm coming to the castle. And I packed my bags, and I took the train up to Guthrie Castle. Now, here's a funny story. Dan was actually at the Bulletproof Conference in LA like a month before, and he saw Dave Asprey, who he was on Dave Asprey's show, the Bulletproof exec. And he told Dave Asprey, second in command, that I'm going to beat Brian Rose like a rented mule. That's what he said. And the guy told me Dan said that, and I got pissed off. I was like, fuck this old man. I can't, he thinks he's doing this. He's not doing a goddamn thing. And so I rode up to Scotland with my bags packed with a chip on my shoulder, and I was this close to not going. And then I told myself, if he says one thing that pisses me off, I'm packing my bag, I'm getting a mini cab service to pick me up at the castle, and I'm going to him home, and the old man can go fuck himself. That's the way I went up there. I was supercharged. Also, at the same time, Mariano and I were trying to have a baby, and we were struggling with a really bad miscarriage. And so it was just hard to even go there. It was hard to even go there. But at the same time, I just knew that desperate times call for desperate situations. And if I didn't take this opportunity, that the future of my family might be in jeopardy. And so we made the decision. I was going to go. I wanted to go. And I was like, I'm going to go do this. But it was a very emotional situation. And so I got up to the castle. First of all, the castle was real. I thought it might be made out of cardboard. I thought it might be a little wooden shack. Who knows? You never know what's going to happen. I get up there. It's gorgeous. It's real. And I remember Dan walked down the staircase in like a college sweatshirt and like sweatpants. And he greeted me and said, hey, you're here. Glad to see you. And his wife, Sally, greeted me as well. And right then, immediately I knew everything was going to be okay. And I had built up this whole thing that I was going to be fighting out with Dan for the week. And immediately he just put me at ease. And I thought, you know what? These are actually nice people. And I set up my cameras and I set up the first interview I did with him before the Castle seminar. And this has been famous. This thing's been watched hundreds of thousands, who knows, probably millions of times. And we talked before I started the seminar. And you could see I'm still not wearing a tie. I still have my soul patch thing on my chin. I did put a jacket on. And I'm trying to figure out what's in store for me for the next week. I know he's ex-military. I know he's going to try to put me through a boot camp. He's isolated me. He's going to try to tear me down and build me back up. And I know it's coming. I went through Hell Week in a fraternity, so I've been through sleep deprivation. I've been through emotional stress. I've been through all of that nonsense back when it was okay to do that stuff. So I'm questioning Dan about what's going to happen, and I'm still trying to feel out the whole situation. And so here's a short clip of that first interview before the Castle seminar started.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. We have a special edition. I am attending this very same QLA mentoring program starting in 2 days. It's been 6 months, Dan, since we sat down and talked to each other. So much has changed. I've changed. Look, I'm wearing a suit now. I'm in a castle interviewing you.
I've noticed.
And you said you used to do webinars and this kind of thing, but now you want people that are committed. They're going to pay the price, literally and figuratively. They're going to come up to here for a week. This is no joke, to get up here to Scotland. Yeah. And they're going to get away from their comfort zone, get away from their family. I mean, this is a bit like SEAL training, right? You're stripping them down, cutting off communication, and now you want to put them through the ringer. You want to break them down. Is that what's going on
Exactly.
here?
A lot of you are here is, how do I get the fucking money? That's the only thing. They don't care about Dan Pena, QLA, anybody. Okay, how do I get the fucking money? Okay, we get to.
I hear that all the time.
Okay,
Brian,
we get to how do you get the fucking money about the end of the third day or the beginning of the fourth day. Okay,
all right, so I should stay for that.
Yeah, you should stay for that. But it's the reason why you haven't gotten the fucking money is that what the first 3 days are all about.
So just so people know the detailed information, I broke down everything going on with my business, with my personal life. I took the success test. I took a psychology test that basically, I think it's trying to break down my own barriers, how I limit myself,
Correct.
My own self-esteem issues, other people in my life bringing me down, including my wife or girlfriend or my parents or my kids.
Absolutely.
And it was interesting because I wasn't expecting some of these questions.
Correct.
Okay.
And because, as I said on the first time you interviewed me, we have two bank accounts in life. We have an emotional bank account and a financial bank account. And the reason our financial bank account isn't where we necessarily want it to be is because of our emotional bank account.
Those first few days, what have been the reactions from people? Do you get people that want to leave? Do you get people that want to cry?
We've had people pass out. A partner in a Big Four accounting firm shit his pants. The person that passed out was a psychiatrist.
Why would they pass out?
They just did.
Oh, okay.
Just the stress.
Okay.
The stress, because I push a lot of buttons.
Jesus. Has anyone ever said, fuck you, Dan Pena, I'm walking out the door?
No, I've thrown a couple out, but nobody's ever said that. Right?
I'll be the first if I walk.
Yeah, if you walk, there'll be plenty of cunts here, but you may be the first cunt to walk out.
Why is this important to you, Dan? Why mentor? Why not be out there and be Alan Sugaring? Why not be Trumping? Why not be doing these things where these guys want to get more wealth? They want to do more accomplishments. They want to show the world.
Because when I took $820 and turned it into $450 million in 8 years in a declining market, I realized, and kids, you're not going to believe this or understand it, it ain't that hard. It just ain't that hard. I know that if I impact you, because I've already impacted you, when I impact you more, you will be a great collaborator for QLA because you have a big following.
So I will be a shining example of the wonders of QLA.
Correct.
You're going to do
and
that.
And if I can do it with you, I can do it with anybody.
Now, let me ask this question. Now, last time I had the interview with you, we turned the cameras off. We went outside. You were saying, I'm going to change your life, Brian Rose. You also told me that you have a glow about you. And I was like,
I do.
Yeah, I know you do. And we'll get to that later. And I got home and I was like, I felt like I had drank ayahuasca. I called it the Peña because like my brain hurt. And part of me says, fuck Dan, and part of me says, all right, we got to keep talking to Dan, and it's very hard to process you. And part of me say, the rational engineer side says this, and I'll be straight with you. It says, look, this is Dan's game. He says, you know something's wrong with you because you could be more successful. Okay, that applies to 98% of the world who's realistic with themselves. I know what's wrong with you. If you listen to me, you'll be more successful, and if you don't, you're an idiot like I thought you were. So by definition, you are right and everyone's wrong.
Yeah.
Is that right, what I said?
Yes. Absolutely.
So then isn't this just a con?
No, it's not a con. It's the truth.
It's the truth.
You call it what you want.
But that means you always win. There's no argument against you.
Well,
because-
no, I only don't win if you quit.
Okay. Again, that always
And I
works.
take that personally. When somebody quit, I've never given up on a mentee in 21 years.
I look forward to this week. All right.
Okay.
And now it begins. The next day, the 7-day Castle Seminar would start. And you're probably asking yourself, what is the Castle Seminar? What is going on here? Well, Dan has been doing this for the past 27 years. And his idea was that if he brings you into an environment of high performance, of opulence, and teaches you these things while you're living the lifestyle, that you'll walk away with an experience that will be with you the rest of your life. And so he brings you into his Scottish castle, which is absolutely gorgeous. It's completely manicured, the lawns. He must have a staff of 25 people making this thing just absolutely stunning year-round. He's got butlers that have been employed by the Queen before. Everyone wears a suit and tie at all times. You have a formal dinner every night. The food is off the hook. Sally has only the best wines, the best everything. And you're surrounded in this environment that slowly starts to seep into you because you ask yourself, well, what if I could live like this? Now, on top of that, Dan starts to put in the QLA methodology into your head. And for the Castle Seminar, and you're about to see some bits from it next, what the first 4 days is it's mostly mental. Like Dan said in the previous clip, we all have two bank accounts, the emotional bank account, the financial bank account. Most of us want to go straight to the financial bank account. How do I get rich? The truth is most of us aren't ready to be rich because we haven't solved all of our emotional issues, our low self-esteem, our need to be liked, our need to be politically correct. So without dealing with this, you might get some money, but you're going to lose it. You're never going to have that wealth mindset. So Dan really starts to deprogram you from the start. And if I'm honest, I'm sure he got this from the military. And that's why if you watch him on day one, he comes out hard. I mean, he really comes out blasting. I think to this day, he walks in the first day, and I think he still hands out tubes of vagina cream and hands it out to everybody in the thing. This is someone who's wearing a suit, who's paid $20,000, $30,000 to be there, and he's handing you out that. He calls everybody cunts. He calls you losers. He makes fun of everybody in the place. He has an old expression that his daughter used to say. His daughter used to say, "Daddy treats everyone the same, like shit." And that's what Dan does. And so he picks on everybody in the room. I'm Brian QLA Rose. The two guys from Cuba are the Goomba brothers. The guy from Qatar is a terrorist or a towelhead. The Mexicans are spics. The black guys, the Chinese, everybody gets made fun of. The women, it's all fair game. So everyone gets feeling quite equal after a while. And again, you're sleeping there, you're being taken care of, and that's what happens. So now I begin the Castle Seminar. I'm wearing a suit and tie every day, which I haven't done in such a long time. And Dan is now instructing about what's going to happen. And of course, I'm recording vlogs on the fly so I can upload that back to London Reelers so they know what's going on. So the next 7 days happens. This is a little bit of a look behind the scenes. If you want to know more, again, all of this content's on the London Reel website. I put together kind of the whole package of what happens before and afterwards. And then after the seminar was over, I had another sit down with Dan that I want to show you after this is over. So this is a little taste of what happens behind the scenes at the Dan Pena Castle Seminar.
I don't say good morning. When you say good morning in the military, you'd say, good morning, Tony. And he'd say, what the fuck's good about it? Have you been sleeping with my wife? Have you fucked my daughter in the mouth? And do you like me? And no matter how you answer it, you're fucked. So whenever somebody says good morning to me, I have these flashbacks. This is you, the room, and this is you, YouTubers. Pay attention, YouTubers, you fucking cunts. You stand around and watch all the opportunities go by. They sit there, oh, I'm getting ready. Bert's getting ready. Bert's getting ready. Rick's getting ready. Oh, maybe the next one. Maybe the next one. Maybe the next one. Oh, fuck, no, I'm tired now. Maybe the next one, and there comes somebody like me. Just jumps on the fucker and eats it. Maybe the next one, Ray. Once you become fearless, life becomes limitless. The difference between me and everybody in this room is I have no fear of anything. Now just imagine if you fucking miserable cunts died tonight. The regrets you're carrying to the grave. I wisha, I coulda, I fucking shoulda.
I kind of feel like Charlie Sheen in the movie Apocalypse Now, as if I've been going up the river and I've been taking the train up through England for 6 hours to get to the castle, and I've been reading the QLA emails and newsletters and listening to the podcasts of Colonel Kurtz, also known as Dan Pena, and my mission has been to come up here to kill him, just like in the movie. And now that I'm here, I want to join him.
I'm high on life. I don't need DMT or ayahuasca. Why? That's all horse shit. Those are for losers.
This is all about your legacy. This
Correct.
is all about what Dan's left on the world.
Correct.
So that's important to you.
Yeah, it is.
You're honest about that.
Yeah, I am.
And
I'm selfish about it.
Okay, you're
And I
selfish
tell
about that.
people, one of the things that you need to do, and I'm stealing my thunder, is you need to be more selfish.
Me.
You as an individual, because you can't love somebody or love what you're doing unless you love yourself. The biggest difference between me and the people in this room is I take responsibility for my actions. And I don't blame them on other people. And that's tough, even when I make a mistake, which is rare. But early in my career, I made a lot of them.
Yes, I am wearing a suit and tie. I'm sure you've never seen me shoot one of these videos dressed like this. It kind of makes you confront things about yourself that you might really not want to talk about or even think about. And it's something that we all try to ignore. And sometimes we distract ourselves with media and the internet, and we don't ever really look a deep look at ourselves.
So that is basically a synopsis of what it's like to be there at the castle for a week. Obviously, I was on an emotional roller coaster. I didn't know what was happening, but things changed over the course of it. As you can see, the first night, I felt, almost like I was in the movie Apocalypse Now, and I was, Martin Sheen, and I'd gone up the river to see Colonel Kurtz, and I was supposed to kill him. And then when I got there, I realized that this madman was actually maybe somehow madly intelligent, and then I wanted to join him. It was just this weird parallel that I drew. I don't know why. And I wrote a whole blog article about that as well. But as the week proceeded, I found that I was really starting to crack through and understand what I needed to tap into myself to make me limitless. And I think it was the second day where I actually had a private meeting with Dan. And Dan does 30-minute private meetings with everybody at the Ghost of the Castle seminar. And I went into his office, and it was very simple. He sat down and said, "How can I help?" And I stood up, and he said, "You can sit down." And I said, "I got to stand up, Dan." And I proceeded to have what I call my come to Jesus moment, where I told him everything I was doing wrong, how I was living in fear, how London Real was small because I was worried about being judged, and I was worried about spending money on the show to make it bigger, and all these things, and how I had a whole plan how I was going to take it to the next level. And Dan just kind of sat there, and he was just like, "Okay." And so people always say, "What happened at the castle, Brian?" Dan didn't get in my face and yell at me and slap me around. He just made me realize that I was playing small and that my life was going to be over. I was going to be dead sooner than later, and I would have left all of this unfulfilled potential on earth. And Dan, that's one of his lines, and that's coming soon when he says things like that. And so it snapped in me that I had to take action now. And if you know your body is decaying and every day is precious, then why wouldn't you make every day the best you can make it? Why wouldn't you work so hard to where when you put your head on the pillow, you crash? I mean, every day should be an exhaustive effort of you trying to be the best you can be. And I learned that up at the castle. That's what I learned. A lot of people say, "What did you learn?" Did you learn about finance and buying businesses and raising capital and hiring lawyers and accountants? Sure, Dan covered that, but that's not what I really learned. I learned that I needed to be all I could be, and that I really wanted to, but I needed that from Dan. I also had a great time. People don't realize that you're hanging out with Dan like 14 hours a day. There's like 8 hours in the classroom, there's coffee breaks, there's dinner at night, and he's funny. He's got crazy ass stories, he cracks jokes, he's making fun of everybody in the class. I mean, I don't know, I was laughing out loud like multiple times during the day. And I went back recently for the hardcore, and I've got some videos we're gonna play there later. And the same thing, I was laughing all day, every day. I was having a great time. Some days I felt like shit, and I was really asking myself why I was being such a, what's the right word, snowflake with my own life, and I wasn't going hard enough, but that's what Dan does. And so at the end of the week, I had a real realization that my life was different and I had to look at life differently. And about day 4, I shaved this thing off my chin. I was looking in the mirror, I still remember it. I was in what he calls the dollhouse on the castle. It's this 2-floor house that's next to the walled garden. And I was like, what is that thing on your chin? And I shaved it off. And no one really noticed, but you can see it's gone in this next video. And I asked Dan if I could sit down with him and have an interview after the show was over. Now, the night before, there's a big party in the castle. We go upstairs to this trophy room and the snooker room, and everyone drinks a ton. But Dan came in early that night because he knew we had an interview the next day. And this is in Dan's trophy room, which has the heads of all the animals he shot in Africa. So again, this might trigger some people. He actually doesn't kill animals anymore. He loves animals more than people. But back in the day, he went on this whole Crocodile Dundee thing. And I think the real Crocodile Dundee helped him shoot like a buffalo at point blank range. You know, he's got a bear that he stabbed to death at the castle. I mean, it's all real. And so now I had this final conversation with Dan, and you can really notice the change in tone. And my father watched this video, and my dad said, wow, I can see how much you changed.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.